Greetings, good afternoon, bonsoir, bienvenue to all who have joined us for what promises to be a rich discussion. Before we go any further, I want to welcome and usher us into this conversation with a flavor of the sounds of Haiti. Katie, you can go ahead and get us going.
Katie, I don't know if it's on, it's hard to hear, just so you know. I'm not hearing the sound.
I think Patrick has his own version.
I was gonna say, it looks like it, Patrick.
My drums too.
Mm-hmm. You're on mute, you're not muted, you're unmuted. Yeah.
Katie, is there a way for us to increase the sound?
Hold on.
Well, what we may do is to share the link to the YouTube clip with our audience so that they're able to access it. But again, I wish to welcome everyone. In the interest of time, we'll get going. My name is Gilberto Gigi Bastian. I'm assistant professor at Morehouse School of Medicine, where I lead our Office of Global Health Equity. It is a pleasure indeed to be with you for this evening's discussion. It's a call for courageous action where we're bringing together some real thought leaders in academia and doing critical work in Haiti who will share with us some ideas informed by the current situation in Haiti and the current challenges facing Haiti and its people, how we might best leverage the resources, the capacity in our institutions and within the broader diaspora community towards the betterment and advancement of opportunity in Haiti, of economic growth, and all of the things that will help our people to thrive. So it truly is a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Our esteemed panelists are here and ready to get us going. I will allow each to present an introduction of themselves as we move into our discussion. But before we get too far in, wanted to share a couple of images with you to help orient us to situating Haiti geographically, right? So we throw around Haiti with the assumption, some of us, especially with ties to the country, that everyone kind of knows what it is that we're talking about and where it is. And we have learned that that's not always something we can take for granted. So I want to share some information to help geographically situate our context. And then we'll move a little bit more of that into the contextualizing of our discussion. So Haiti, or Haiti, shares an island with the Dominican Republic. It is comprised of 10 departments, right? So we have the tendency sometimes of generalizing. We make comments about the current sort of political situation or the challenges as though there is sort of one definition or one reality, one understanding of Haiti, its people, its culture, et cetera. It's very complex, as can be said about many other parts of the world, right? So there's great diversity represented across these 10 departments of Haiti, which then further break down into 42 districts, right? Each with their own sort of governance, their own challenges, their own assets, their own realities that have to be brought to bear in thinking about supports in Haiti. And then we can think about it even further breakdown into cities and towns that exist, right, within those districts, of which there are 145, right? And then at an even more sort of granular level, we can consider that Haiti is comprised of 571 rural communities that we call section communale, right? And so this we thought was an important initial piece of contextualizing our conversation to understand the complexities and the nuance that has to inform our reflections as we consider how best to walk alongside our brothers and sisters in Haiti towards a better future, a better tomorrow. And so with that, I'll move us into our discussion. We'll begin with Mr. Patrick Dessous. And Patrick, I'll invite you to kind of introduce yourself and the work of your organization. And you will share with us what I think is an absolutely critical starting point for this conversation, which has to do with anchoring that discussion in some understanding of the present day realities of Haiti in the context in which we would be looking to intervene. So Patrick, without further ado, bienvenue. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Bastien. My name is Patrick Dessous. I have the privilege to one business support operator in Haiti, working at the intersection of agriculture and small growing businesses called CASELI, which is an acronym for Centre d'appui et de services aux entreprises locales et internationales. We work throughout the country, and I was very happy to see, all the, district, the arrondissement, the communal sections, because that's where we work. Exactly, mostly with farmers and rural SGPs. Okay, I will say that let's start. I will say for the rest of the world, Haiti is considered as a black box, right? We often hear in the news, everything's bad about Haiti. We're talking about the Del Rio debacle happening. We're talking about earthquake. We're talking about hurricanes, misery. In a one word frame Haiti over the past 30 years. But I would say we are more than that, because in Haiti, we do have a lot of assets. We do have a lot of people believing in the cause of making a better livelihood, for people living in rural communities. And to do that, we can do it with three main pillars, right? We're talking about the academia, we're talking about the private sector, and we're talking about the states. So I think there's gonna be a solidarity between the three pillars, to move things forward. Saying that, I mean, my talk today is mostly about solidarity. And when I say solidarity, it's solidarity with between the people living in Haiti and what I call, I'm going to take that word, a note from Dr. Nicolas, what I call the complex piece. The complex piece for us is what we call the diaspora. Because with the diaspora, I'll be honest, I mean, if we want to move forward, to have a better future, for the children in Haiti, we're going to need the diaspora to come as one block. And doing that, we'll need the academia big time, because Haiti is so complex. We have to reach a level of universities to start thinking about, okay, what will be the next step, what we should be doing. Because right now, a lot of people, they live in Haiti, right? And they have a good reason to do so. And on the same token, I'm giving a shout out to all the business owners, to all the Haitians, that continue to operate in that difficult environment. The one, they still believe that there's a better future. And I know in the diaspora also, a lot of you guys would like one day to come back, go to Mol Saint-Nicolas, go to Cap-Haïtien, or, go to Jacmel, go to Jérémy Olekay, or Port Salut to enjoy. Okay, we need that. And today, as I said, a lot of us left, a lot of us perish in the Darien Gap, because what I always tell my friends, to never underestimate the power of determination if it's driven by desperation. Because we Haitian, we're gonna make sure it happens, okay? And today, I'm really honored to be participating in the panel with all the distinguished guests, Dr. Kader, Dr. Nicola, Dr. McGriff, Dr. Bastien. It's really a pleasure. So now, another thing Kazeli is doing is trying to serve as a platform to connect the diaspora directly with the business world. And when I say the business world, the rural SGBs, because we're gonna need that. And with the help of technology, I think it can happen. And today, we have a big hope that we still have people in the diaspora talking about Haiti, talking about how we can make Haiti a better place, for future generation. I'm gonna stop here, Dr. Bastien. And now I have hope. I mean, a hope that one day I will be taking a lot of you in the field to visit the cooperatives working, in rural Haiti, in the field to meet with business owners in Haiti, and
Oh, is everyone still here in public?
Nope, no, he got stuck.
It froze for me. Well, we were
That's what happened with the Digicel, Digicel not calm. You never know. By him cornet.
indeed. Well, while we await Patrick's return, he's already laid a lot of really rich ground for us to till, right? And one of those pieces that I would love to hear you weigh in on, Dr. Nicolas, really has to do with both that balance, right, of the challenges facing Haiti, but we know so much about the assets that can be leveraged. And we know that there's not so much a challenge of lack of desire for folks to step in and to do something and to be a part of some solution or some constructive action in Haiti. It's more of a question of how to do that effectively and ethically and in a way that honors the capacity of the country and its people. So Dr. Nicolas, I know you bring rich experiences in that space with us, so would love to hear your thoughts around how best to position ourselves for effective sort of action in country. And if you would start with letting the rest of the world know who you are and the amazing work that you do, that would be great.
Thank you so much. I say honneur tout moun kap gade yo, nous dit bonsoir tout moun, honneur. If we were at home, we would say honneur. Dr. Bastien would say
respect.
There we go. Right. So really happy to be with all of you this afternoon. Thank you so much for hosting this amazing panel. My name is Marie-Gerda Nicolas. I'm born and raised in Tigouave. I will not be mad at Patrick because he did not list Tigouave while he was listing places. I am a clinical psychologist by training with a little bit over 30 years of doing so. I am a professor at the University of Miami, where I am leading a division there, a whole department there, as well as a program on mental health counseling. In addition to that, I am the co-founder of Rebâti Santé Mentale, which is an organization that's focusing on mental health, both in country, outside of the country. That's been around for a little bit over 25 years. And then just a little bit over 10 or so years ago, really began about the idea of creating a foundation as we identified the gaps of the country. So we created the Haiti Community Trust as a foundation with a good friend of mine, Pierre Imbert, as the very first permanent investment fund to really support exactly the work that you just heard Patrick talking about. And as you saw on the slides that Dr. Bastien was showing, is to really support innovations in the rural communities as well. So it is within that spirit that I come to share with you some of my perspective in terms of what would be the impetus for us to think about creating a foundation like Haiti Community Trust to do such work, right? So clearly there's a gap missing, and what were some of the gaps that we noticed in terms of the work? And so I want to share with you three, four things, and I know I have 5 minutes. This is really like challenging for Haitians. 5 minutes it takes us to say hello, good morning. So 5 minutes to share with you some key things. One of the things that I think we noticed is that there's a level of what I refer to as pseudo-development. That means pseudo-development. Things that it appears to be that it will be development, but in fact, it's not development. And let me just give an example. The Haiti as a country has a little bit, maybe close to 12 million people. New York as a state has 19.8 million people, which means the country of Haiti is less than New York is as a state. But if you look to see large entities like USAID and others that have seek to do work in Haiti in terms of development, then you must ask yourself whether or not that is true development. I refer to those as true development because there's the perspective of truly being in development, and then there's the appearance of wanting to be developed, right, and so forth. So that is, to me, falls into that category of a model of individuals who may be talking about development in Haiti, but when you really look down to it, development is not taking place, right? The second group of individuals that I want to highlight as what I refer to as poverty maintenance groups, right? And so we're talking about entities and organizations for whom that their work has been going on for 25 years, 30 years, but it maintains people at exactly the same level of poverty. Nothing has shifted in terms of the GDP. Like, we have not moved in terms of looking at economic development. And so that's an important element for us to look at, because it tells us that that model, while it's maintaining people where they're at, it's not leading to a thriving society, a successful society overall. And then there's a third group of individuals that I would first do as what people have really been pushing for, which is more Haiti-based models, more Haitian business models, right, for the most part. And when we look at those Haitian business models, they tend to be operated by about a 5% of the population, the same 5% that have the most level of wealth and the same level of power, which means the 576 communal that Dr. Bastien was talking about does not happen. It does not reach them in the same way. And it really creates the bottleneck that we are seeing in Port-au-Prince, where most of those businesses are situated, to force people to leave their home to go to a place to be able to get a job. And so that really is an important point. The last point I'll mention is what we notice, what I refer to as the random acts of improvement. Right? These are the many of us who something happens and we feel the need to respond. And so we will respond immediately to do something at that moment, because there's an earthquake, because there's a hurricane that is taking place. And then we respond right away. And then we go back to, things as usual, right? And so to us, those are the models that we've seen, Dr. Bastien, that really hasn't been as effective, right? But then on top of that, we have to take a look at what we're talking about here today, which is this asset framing model, right? How do we recognize that while Patrick is talking about the fact that there are challenges in the country, but that there are also a lot of assets and strengths and innovations, right? That within the black box that Patrick was talking about, innovations is possible. IIT is possible. IIT is capable, right, in the midst of that. And so with all of that, I think it gets us to talk a little bit about the last part I'll mention in my 1.5 minutes that is left, and that is a new model is needed, right, in terms of how we do things. We need a model that is community-driven in nature. And what do I mean by community driven? I'm not making this stuff up. With the frameworks are there in terms of us thinking about community driven. By community driven development, I'm talking about development initiatives that provides control of development process, the resources, the decision-making authority directly to the groups of people in the community, right? So it operates on principles of transparency, participation, accountability, and enhanced local capacity, right? And then second, we have to have mission-driven investment, which means that there has it's not about providing charity. It's not about just providing donations. It is about investing in a mission in an innovative way in a community, like some of the work that Cassidy is doing that we just heard about. And then lastly, I would say it must be what many of our business folks talk about, which is it must be fault tolerant, right? It must be fault tolerant, which means that the work that we are doing cannot be, while it is interconnected, it cannot be dependent on other parts, right? And so if in fact the political system has fallen apart, it does not mean the country has fallen apart. It does not mean the work that is being done has fallen apart because one part has done so. So being able to do all of that, Dr. Bastien, calls for us to readjust our mind when it comes to Haiti. We need to press delete in our mindset and reset our mind in terms of what development and what this work needs to look like in the country. And this is exactly what this panel is about, is the ways that the academic entity can come in and really think about that shifting that we need to do as a collective in order for us to really think about development for the long run. I'm super excited. I'm pumped up for this conversation. So thank you.
Indeed, so much to unpack there. And you ended with a beautiful piece that we've had many conversations about, right? And that we are excited to kind of bring to our attendees. And Dr. Kade, I'm going to take it to you to help us think a little bit deeper about that. So in light of the context Patrick has laid out for us, in light of the history and the challenges Dr. Nicolas has mapped out in terms of how we have not gotten it right, in terms of the various players who have intervened in one way or another in Haiti, as we consider how the academic enterprise might be positioned uniquely to move differently and more effectively towards these same challenges. What can you share with us about how we can leverage the resources, the capacity in academic institutions, and what unique things we can leverage to address some of the challenges that have been laid out? And if you'll start by introducing yourself, Dr. Kade, that'd be great. Oh, you're on mute, Jean.
Okay. So my name is Jean-Luc Kade. I was born in Cape Haitian in Haiti and spent my primary and secondary school in Haiti and then moved to Brooklyn where I went to college at Brooklyn College and subsequently attended Columbia University for medical school. I did my psychiatry residency there at Columbia also, and then did my neurology residency at Mount Sinai, also in New York City. After doing these residencies, I went to the NIH at the National Institute of Mental Health to do a postdoctoral fellowship, went back to Columbia, and I was an assistant professor at Columbia for 5 years before I went back to the NIH in '92. And I've been at the NIH since then, and I'm a tenured investigator, senior investigator. I run a lab where I do mostly now basic research. I publish papers on clinical aspect of different neuropsychiatric diseases, but now I'm really doing mostly basic science research. Now, I'm telling you all of this to let you know that I've spent my whole life at academic institution, so-called top-tier American universities and centers. So the issue that are being brought about Haiti often for me is a struggle because the tendency of people like me, even though I grew up in Haiti, spent a lot of time there, is to try to apply. And I think that's a big danger, right? Is to try to apply solutions that I'm used to seeing at universities and at the NIH and try to apply those top to bottom on top of Haiti and say, okay, this is what we do, this is what worked, this is what's gonna work for Haiti. And obviously, those have not worked. And as Dr. Nicolas said, and Patrick Dessauce said, these approaches tend to really fail in countries like Haiti, which bring me to another issue related to Fogarty, the NIH Fogarty, right? You've heard of the NIH Fogarty. There are a lot of people who've gone to different universities from their university, spent a year or two being paid by the NIH to do research, and then I'm not sure that this is worked that much in Haiti. So those are issues that maybe Dr. Nicolas and Patrick DeSouza can talk to us about during the discussion. But from what I know, I've not seen the Fogarty work in Haiti. I mean, the one thing that I would support, though, and then that's also for discussion, the NIH has these programs, and universities also have them, where they have intramural laboratories, like my lab, okay? So I've often tried to get young Haitians, physicians, PhDs, to come to work with me at the NIH, and those can happen, but I've not been successful. I've been successful as getting Haitian Americans in my lab to work, but I've never been able to get Haitian from Haiti to come and work. And I think those are kind of activities that might be fruitful in terms of getting young Haitian trained in Haiti to labs like, say, in Florida, in Miami, at Emory, at other places, and at Howard University, at Morehouse. Especially, I would like to see young Haitian actually go, to tell you the truth, at historically Black colleges to learn stuff. And so I think even though the Fogarty has not worked, and it might be difficult to get Haitians to come here and work and go back to Haiti, because I can tell you the vast majority of European, Asians, South Americans who've come to NIH work have not gone back to those countries. So we may have the same problem with Haitians. But there's another way we could do this, though, and then that touches on what Dr. Nicolas was talking about, is to set up committees made of local advocates, okay, at universities in Haiti, where people like me and Dr. Nicolas, Dr. Bastien, and Dr. McGriff can go and actually try to train people in certain research activities. I think those are going to be very important for Haiti. Right now, there are 5 medical schools that are approved, but they're all in Port-au-Prince, okay? So, I'm thinking that it was a great thing that you showed the this department that we need to develop Haiti in other places, not so that people don't, keep on flooding really Port-au-Prince. And so I think in general, there are possibilities, but I think like Dr. Nicolas said, the research center's activities need to be run by people in Haitian advocates in Haiti, where people like me who live in the diaspora, we have certain skills, we can work with the people advocate, listening to what the local Haitian advocates think Haiti need, so that we can develop the needs and take into consideration the assets that Haiti has, so that we can not depend on people telling Haiti what to do, because that's the only way that Haiti for Haitian will be a reality, from my perspective.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'll bring you in at this point, Dr. McGriff, both to hear any additional thoughts you might add around what academia's position to contribute to the many challenges we're discussing, but also sort of bridging us to this conversation of what Haitian Americans, the diaspora, and because most of us sit here in the States, sort of starting off thinking about that US, but you can certainly help us to consider the broader kind of diaspora base. But would love to hear your thoughts about what role that community, the diaspora community, can play in helping to advance opportunity in Haiti. And if you'll start by introducing yourself.
Great, thank you so much. And it really is a pleasure to join this conversation and be a part of what I think is an important discussion. So in terms of background, I am an MD by training, but a public health and global health practitioner in terms of practice. I also have a Juris Master's in Global Public Health Law. I currently serve as faculty within the Department of Global Health here at the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University. And I've also taken on a new role within the last year or so as Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And so this conversation is right up my alley as we think about equity and we think about what we're doing within this space as it relates to Haiti. But prior to my role at academia, I spent about 4 years working in and out of Haiti in the rural community of Grand Bois in medical, water, business development, and educational programming. So I come at this as a practitioner, as a scholar, and as a co-creator with marginalized communities. And so I just want to make a couple of points in terms of the importance and the possibility that we have in terms of the diaspora contributing to the development of Haiti, because I will say I was not Haitian born. I am the diaspora. My mother is from the Jérémie area. My father is from Domazo, which is not too far from Gamboa, where I ended up working for many years. And so when I looked at this, I was a pure, if you will, Haitian American in the sense of getting my education here in the States and thinking about ways that I could help. And one of the things that I really want to just bring forward is that we do have to have respect for the diversity of contribution when it comes to the diaspora. I think we have to start with the premise that everyone can participate, but we are going to participate differently, and that's okay. Some will have the time and the circumstance where they can spend time on the ground directly involved in projects and programs, and that's great. Others may have the financial means to be able to give to productive programs. And that's absolutely required, and we need to have that support and funding. Others want to be able to learn, to loan their expertise. And so I think this is where a little bit in terms of where academia fits in to help program designers, help evaluators, help communities understand the best frameworks and best practices that they can become familiar with and begin understanding how can some of this be integrated, not deposited, integrated into what fits best for the communities. Or others can be very straightforward and simplistic, like my mom, who decided to sit and systematically create birthing kits for new mothers by sewing cloth diapers and then wrapping onesies and newborn socks and baby caps into a bundle and then shipping them over to the rural hospital where I was working, where she did hundreds of these. And all the women who were preparing to give birth received this. And that one thing was what she could do, and it made a tremendous impact. But then I think this wraps into something I really resonated very much with what Professor Gaydar was talking about in terms of these random acts of improvement. I think we need to get beyond that in terms of the diaspora and begin to really, really look at frameworks for organizing ourselves for maximum impact. Everyone has a passion for their thing, and that's good, but we have to respect our own proverb that says many hands make the load light, right? We all have to be focused on something that we're trying to do to get somewhere together so that when we go off on our own or we start a new thing, that's just one more thing that will need consistent funding and support in order to see sustainability. It's another act of another random act of improvement, as Dr. Gaydar said. And I think we have to get to the place where we can really organize this. And I say this in particular for academia, where we need to organize our brain trust here and really think about this in terms of the landscape of what the needs are and how do we get the experts and the people with different expertise to align themselves in a way that we can see that impact. Now, we can argue, and I'm sure there are many reasons why people go off and do their own thing. Okay, I understand the difficulties sometimes of working and you don't really want to align with what other people are doing, but I just see a lot of wasted opportunity that we could really use to strengthen existing programs. And instead, we're trying to pursue a new thing. And then lastly, I want to really start this piece about taking a systems level approach. I think this is related to the last point in terms of the one-offs that we need to get away from. But I think we need to think about what we're doing in terms of systems. So rather than focusing on the one school project in the one school that you're in, we want to understand how your program is affecting the other schools in the region, and then see whether or not there's some opportunity for collaboration. Can you expand your influence, your funding, your activities to address this and strengthen the system? Again, even if it's in that city or in that district. So rather than just being, again, the one-off, we can start looking at making an impact on the actual, for instance, I'm talking about the education system. The same could be said about any of the health programs. I think as we really think about the system level approach, it may even begin to reach back into what sometimes is a very destabilized central government, and really be thinking about, well, how does this all work at this community level to strengthen even what, sometimes isn't available in terms of strong leadership at that level. And so I think, those are the main points I wanted to make in terms of how the diaspora can really be impactful in this moment. And I'd really love to hear some other thoughts about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McGriff. And you encapsulate beautifully, I think, so much of what makes this a tricky sort of enterprise, right? To say Haiti is home, we want to do something that helps to address some of the challenges we hear about, we see about on the news is one thing, but moving from that sentiment, moving from beautiful aspirational discourse to actual meaningful and effective action is what has proven to be such a challenge for the broader community for so many years. And so would welcome thoughts from the full panel as we consider if this is about a new conversation, a new strategy, a new forward-thinking, innovative, community-anchored, assets and strength-driven and based sort of strategy that we're talking about, pulling together with academics and members of the diaspora, playing a critical sort of advisory and other sort of roles. What at this point are we envisioning as the key ingredients or indicators that good work is happening here? How do we envision or understand success as we are at this stage? And admittedly, it's an early stage, right? And even the discussion that we're having today is a part of this three-part series of starting to kind of unpack some key considerations. But it's also an important point to be thinking about the end game and what success would mean and look like. So would love to hear your thoughts about even armed with what we have right now, what's your sense of what some of the key ingredients or indicators of success would look like if we were to do good work here? And I'll open that up to anyone on the panel to get us started.
So I can start. I think I give the example of the 5 approved medical schools in Haiti. I think I'm a scientist. So from my perspective, and I like to see more clinical research being done in Haiti around the medical schools. So there's disease specific. There are specific diseases that might be more prevalent in Haiti. Okay, there might be some other issues, right? So I think if we could train master's level and doctorate level clinical scientists, so I would like to see in about 5 years and 10 years that we have a cadre of people who are actually conducting research in Haiti and writing papers and receiving funding from different organizations to do this work together with the Haitian population. I think those kind of research would be not only be good in terms of disease prevention, but I think that would be a really good thing for the Haitian citizenry in general. That's what I would like to see.
I appreciate your comments, Dr. Cadet. There's so much around what we're discussing has to do with thinking about the sort of workforce capacity and training up folks in the research space and the education space and so many other arenas to be able to do what we know they're capable of, which is to lead the advancement of progress in Haiti. I think that's such a critical part of what will have to come into play as we think about effective engagement of diaspora, right? The disentangling what it means to have our hands all the way in it and be on the ground versus playing that supportive, guiding, advisory, linking to resources kind of role that can help our brothers and sisters on the ground to really maximize the amazing things that they're already doing in country. And I know Patrick and Gerda and Dr. Nicolas, both you have some strong ideas and thoughts about this as well. So would welcome your thinking as well around what success would look like here.
Yeah, I think it's such a great question. And I really appreciate that, what Dr. Carter said, because I do think it speaks very much to that, what Dr. McGriff was just talking about, which I love this term, organized brain trust. I'm going to be using, that's a new podcast for us, to really because, and I say that because as we think about most of what has happened over the years in terms of the sheer number of us as professionals who are outside of the country, and what would that look like in an organized way and a trusted and collective way that we could be in country. And I think that would be really important. I think that we oftentimes say in IT community trust that and I don't know how to say that in English, but like when you pee, it shouldn't be like sweating all over the place. And how do you have it concentrated, right? So to me, when you ask the question, well, what does success looks like? I said, wow, imagine for a moment, we can have a collective, organized brain trust, an organized group of the diaspora who has decided to actually go deep, right? As opposed to large, like, because we're all over. But imagine for a moment, we said, we're gonna take 10 sections communales, 20 sections communales, and we will stay deep in those sections communales, and we will focus on health and education and livelihood, because this is what the communities are telling us that they want. Right? That they really need. These are not us coming in to say what would happen. It still is very much community driven, because we're hearing that the communities are saying these are the 3 major pillars that we need. We need to be able to educate our young. We need to be able to live beyond the age of 55, right? Our life expectancy must be higher than it is now. And we need money in our pockets. So imagine for a moment if we did that collective thing and we said, we're just going to test this one out with 10 sections communales. When we do it and we begin to evaluate it and assess it, we ensure that it's fault tolerant, because one cannot be dependent on the other, right? And then we say, how do we scale that up to another 20, right? To another 20. And to me, that is what then we'll be able to demonstrate and show what that impact and success is like. Patrick, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. I mean, I think we're all like, yes.
I'm gonna just build on that in the sector, because remember, we're trying to formalize, enterprises in Haiti and make sure that Haiti becomes a business-led country instead of NGO-led country, because there's a big difference. And for me, success will be to have one day the diaspora or people in academia advocating for the US to have a income tax convention with Haiti. Jamaica did it in 1980. So we need to have the same thing. Doing that will change the game completely. And success for me also is seeing the people in the diaspora saying, okay, I'm the board member of XYZ enterprise in Haiti. I invested X amount of money and time at a company located in Haiti. And then I want them to talk about the same thing, like building in Haiti from the section communal section, from the commune, the arrondissement, and the department. I think that's the model we need to promote to see, like, in 5 years or 10 years, if Cornillon Grand Bois, we're going to focus on Grand Bois and say in Grand Bois, if there's like 100 families and they have children, we need all these children to strive. We need them to eat regularly, go to school, and get a house to stay, and actually go to the park. If we don't have the park, maybe, go cool in the savannah, with security, with no thought of being, in danger. That's what success is like for me. I want to see Haiti moving from that low, what I said, sous-developed country, to something else. Because imagine the diaspora, coming to Haiti every year, vacation, we're not gonna deal with it. 4-day weekends. We're not gonna deal with it. We're gonna go to Haiti, you know, make sure that we bring some money, connect with our friends, you know, go to the nice places, you know, in the mountain and the beaches. We go to Akaye, we go to Keskov, you know, that flâner. We want to see that. We want to see that happen. And as I said, everything we're doing at Kazili, we're doing it for the sake of the children. Because I think Haiti will be better if we create more businesses. More businesses gonna translate to more jobs, and more jobs gonna be more money going to the families. And I don't want to have a Del Rio in 10 years. I don't think we need to avoid that at all costs. Del Rio will not happen in 10 years. And to do that, the diaspora, and I said academia, we need to think deeper, okay? Because 20 years ago, I knew people that jump on the boat and make it to Miami. It's still happening. So we need to address the root cause. 20 years ago, a lot of people left, for example, Annette in the Gunners department to move to Port-au-Prince, you know, to stay in a Cincy town. I don't know, I'm gonna use that word. It's still happening. So we need to create jobs at the locality. I said jobs and good jobs. We need to have that trend, like people leaving Port-au-Prince, you know, moving to the rural areas, you know, to build the capacity of the communities. We need to have that. We need to create wealthy Haitians, and that they're not afraid to say, okay, I fais ma marché. We need to create that. We need to change that mentality completely, and better deal with our partners, foreign partners, because without them, they are kind of limited. Better deal with them. Make sure they understand the reality in Haiti. Make sure we have solid deals, trade deals, okay? Because we need money to flow in our economy. And as I said, the diaspora need to occupy the place it deserves. Because without the diaspora, believe me, nothing's going to happen. Success for me is seeing the diaspora when they said, hey, so this is Haiti, becomes a joke. That's success for me.
Yeah, I appreciate your remarks and the really compelling vision for us, for sure. And as I consider all that you collectively have laid out for us in terms of the resources that can be leveraged, the strategies and leveraging systems level interventions to move forward, there's sort of an unspoken kind of piece that you touched on, Patrick, which has been a real deterrent and a real barrier, I think, for effective strategy, especially here recently, I would say, for Haiti, which, you know, some have branded as some have deemed this branding sort of issue, that image, that narrative that is driving kind of how people view, how people understand what Haiti is, what its capacity is, what its people are capable of, so on and so forth. What are your thoughts about how in this time we overcome that animal, that barrier of the branding and folks being sort of their first thought as soon as you utter the word Haiti is the issues of insecurity? And we know there are real and relevant challenges. We don't want to deny that or be walking around with blinders. Yeah. But what about that concern, both you know, in terms of academic institutions wanting to fully galvanize and leverage what they could bring to bear, but also members of the diaspora outside of our spheres and our institutions who are sometimes held back by that narrative and by those stories? What would you say around that challenge?
I think,
and that's everyone too.
I think everything starts with dialogue. You know, I think we need to start talking more about the positive things happening in Haiti, because we don't see that a lot. On the newspapers, you know, even online, we barely see positive things being posted about Haiti. It's very difficult, you know, to find that. So we as a collective, we need to start building that narrative, promoting positive only. In the diaspora, I think one thing we've been fighting for a long time. Imagine the diaspora coming together and say, okay, we're gonna have a month, we're gonna dedicate a month to buy stuff coming from the whole area in Haiti for 1 month. And you'll see the impact you can make just doing that. So, like December, close to January, January 1st is Independence Day. Got a lot of good stuff. But imagine that we import, we're shipping the jumeau to the US. So you helping a farming community. Imagine you buying the coffee, the mangoes, the avocados, everything we can produce in Haiti, and make sure we have a secure market just for 1 month, and you will see the impact of that strategy. Because the only reason we have gangs in Haiti, we have all the bad stuff happening, the primary reason is economy. We need to address that. And the other things, following that, I would say civic education is needed big time, because for the longest time, we lost faith in that country, and that affects the branding. What you're saying, Dr. Gigi, we need to actually, I don't know, have a new brand book. Let's design a new brand book for Haiti. Okay, the next generation, okay, needs to face a Haiti that's different from the one you and I know right now. We want to see people, as I said, children running in the streets, bathing in the rain, everything like that. Things we used to in the past. We need to get back to that and better.
Can I interject something?
Sure.
So, when we're talking about, the reason why I'm thinking about this is because of what Patrick is saying right now. So in the 60s, when I was growing up, that was when the brain drain really started. Now, the one thing we're not discussing is, okay, what is to prevent once we go in? Just this sounds a bit negative. When we go in, Patrick, and start building these resources, these infrastructures, what is to prevent the brain drain from continuing? That's why I was hesitating about bringing scientists from like PhDs or MDs to the NIH, to the other academic institution. What's to prevent that from occurring? I think, Gerda, you might want to talk about that also.
Yeah, I'll let Dr. G. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I want to make sure I give my sister fine before we move on to that conversation. Joanne, I know your mic was off a little bit before, and I don't know if you wanted to add anything in that, because it's, this is how we do. Dr. Joanne, I don't know if there's
No, I didn't want you to follow this line of thinking, but I will say that I think you and Patrick have really covered a lot of what I wanted to say. So I'm very grateful to that. But in terms of just the depth rather than the breadth of work that we do, I really strongly feel like this is a way forward for us. And I think, Patrick, you started talking about some time dimensions on this, 5 and 10. I'm talking about 20 years. Let us make a 20-year commitment to these 10 cities or these 10 areas that you want to itemize. And then from that point, say that we will not leave until we see X, Y, and Z outcomes. And some of those outcomes need to be from the community itself. So it's able to count our buildings and talk about our programs and say how many things we've done, how many people we've fed. But can we ask certain questions of the community and see the level of our impact? Do they know what that building means? Do they know what will keep coming in and out? Has it touched their life? Those are the kind of indicators I think that will take our work to a different level, as opposed to what we see going on right now with NGOs and all the other people who just want to count things. So I will pause there and say, please go ahead, Dr. G, with responding to this issue of the brain drain, why that is something that we have to contend with.
Yeah, and no, and I actually think that if in fact we do exactly some of the things that we are doing, that we won't see the brain drain. People can leave. Like, we are in the United States, and there are lots of other countries that people leave their country for a period of time and then they come back, right? The difference is between me saying I must get out of this place because there's nothing good for me here, versus there's lots of livelihood. I've chosen to take a position in the United States. I have chosen to take a position in Canada. I'm not forced to leave my country to go take a position in another place. And that's the distinction, Dr. Kade, that I think we have to, that we are really arguing for. And that is, we know very well when we look at the migration and acculturation research and so forth, people are not interested in leaving like time where I'm not interested in leaving we have 320 different kind of mangoes in Haiti. I'm not interested in leaving, home so I can go to another place, but I'm forced to do so because of the lack of opportunities. And I don't believe that we will see the same level of brain drain that we're talking about if in fact we do the things that we are talking about in terms of that deep level investment and so forth. But for us to do so effectively, it means I must not have an allegiance to a place. They cannot be about what is good for my section communal, côté petit papa mwen yo sorti, côté, where my great grandfather, that cannot be the focus of the work. So that's important. It also means I have to strip myself of my ego because this is not about me. Right? This is not about me. This is right, and so forth. And lastly, it means that we have to work on our traumas, right? Because the traumas that we've experienced have made me unable to trust Joanne to come along with me because I feel like she's going to leave me at any given moment along this path. So somehow I'm going to have to heal my head and believe and trust that she's going to have me and she's going to have my back no matter what, right? In terms of being able to do this work for the long run, for the long term, as we are talking about. But the key thing here is it is possible, it is, we are capable of doing that. And when Dr. Basson talked about this piece around new branding, new narrative, man, thank God for ADEDFU Foundation, because somebody's gonna show up on that YouTube, they're gonna look on the Facebook, and they're gonna see this group of Haitians. You're gonna see this group of Haitians, and that's not gonna change your mentality about who we are as a people. That's not going to change your mentality about, what is capable, what is possible out of Haiti. We are the descendant. This is who we are. That's what runs in our blood. So I think the more that we expose, because the news media we can't rely on them, Patrick, to be able to do all of that, because that's not what's selling right now in the media, right? Yeah. But these conversations, Haitians coming together on a Thursday afternoon during this United Nations, and here we are, you get a chance to say, Joanne McGriff, Assistant Dean, what? MD, MPH, like the girl has so many things after her name that you can't even say them all. Like, how do you not change your mind of who we are as a Haitian people when these things are happening? So let's do more of those. I want to say thank you to EDFU Foundation for really putting this, spearheading these conversations, because it is to that mechanism that we're about to shift the thinking. I don't think we need to get billboards. I'm not a big fan of billboards. Let's just make it happen. Let the people talk.
Dr. G, you could not have better set me up for wrapping this conversation up. There's so much represented by the very folks around the table here, and we're just a snippet of the reflection of what Haiti can bring to bear and leading its own way out of the current situation we find ourselves in. I just want to reiterate some critical pieces that were laid out today, that it is time for a fresh strategy, for fresh thinking to be applied when it comes to addressing the challenges that are facing Haiti right now. It is time to move away from aspirational discourse. And we as academics, we could discourse for days. It's one of our faults that we'll have to keep in mind as we move forward. And we know that it's time for constructive action. And so there's so much richness that has been laid out. We had one of our attendees, Dr. McGriff, share that it really resonated with this audience member. You're speaking about the various lenses that you bring to this and thinking about walking alongside Haiti as a co-creator of a better future. And I think that's such an important and critical part of the ethos of what's driving our conversation. There's been too much of folks going in and intervening in Haiti with the sense that we've got it all figured out. This is a country with a host of challenges that you don't need me to guide you through, but so much capacity and so much potential and so many strengths. And we do have to take on that task of telling Haiti's story and really bringing to the fore so many models of success of how folks are doing astounding things with very little of what we take for granted here in the US and elsewhere in the broader Haitian diaspora. So I am pleased to say that this is just the beginning of work that we hope will in every way reflect what we're talking about in terms of going deeper and not taking that sort of breadth strategy, but really looking for opportunities for substantial and meaningful contributions and collaboration with our partners in Haiti. So I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts and then in any final sort of remarks from our panel, if I can get my technologies to cooperate here. 1 second. I don't know why this is refusing to expand for me, but it is time for a new strategy, and we believe strongly and want to reiterate that the diaspora has a place in that conversation, but we want to be intentional about activating that group in a way that is effective and that leverages all that we can bring to a conversation around advancement in Haiti. We do take on the position that academia is uniquely positioned in light of all that is happening with Haiti, the brain drain, the flow of folks out. What we do as an enterprise is produce workforce of health professionals in education, professionals in business. There are opportunities for us to do that in a way that can be mutually beneficial and that can be a win-win in providing opportunities for our experts, our faculty, our students to sit alongside their counterparts, their colleagues, their brothers and sisters on the Haiti side who can also help to advance scholarship in really innovative and creative ways. And so I think our enterprises represent a particularly important partner. And there's so many others that we can call into this work, but critical to doing this differently will be approaching that work in a culturally responsive, in a community-centric way that is fully anchored in an appreciation of the assets and the strengths of Haiti and its people. I know that those were some of the key points that the group wanted to share. I do want to acknowledge and thank the CSW event for allowing us the opportunity to use this platform to share this conversation. I want to thank all of you, our panelists, our attendees who took the time to be with us this evening. I want to acknowledge our organizations that are currently around the table, and we are absolutely looking to broaden that coalition to really maximize what we could bring to bear. And we know that there are people who we have yet to meet who are going to be critical partners in what we're looking to do alongside our compatriots in Haiti. So with that, I will wrap us up. I will share with the audience that we have all of your information, your email, those who registered, and we'll be in touch because this is the first of at least a 3-part series. So look out for some communication from us about the next discussion in which we hope to move from conversation into commitments and thinking about how to really operationalize meaningful action. So thanks again to our panelists. Thank you to everyone who was able to join us this afternoon.
Thank you. So nisha chava mali.
Music start net. Oh my God.
I should have had you play for our drums in the beginning. If I knew you had that.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Mm.